I'm Batman. You see, I'm both Bruce Wayne and Batman. Not because I have to be. No. Because I choose to be. Why do we falter? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
The hell are you supposed to be?
I'm vengeance.
Unless you are a person who hasn't been born yet or have some serious cases of amnesia, there is no living, breathing organism in this entire cerulean orb that does not know who Batman is. You know him, I know him, even a water bear knows him. The darkened costume crime fighter with a personal vendetta against criminals after the murder of his parents that ascended the ranks from being such a simple 1930s pulp character to being one of my personal favorite superheroes and a wide culture phenomenon. Created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, this iconic DC figure ruled the comic book landscape alongside Superman and Spider-Man with some of the most recognizable and influential graphic novels to date. Eventually crossing over not only with The Shadow, which happens to be one of Batman's true inspirations, but the Man of Steel alongside Wonder Woman, The Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg to form the Justice League. He's been featured in video games, live-action shows, and especially cartoons, with one of the most well-known being the 1990s Batman the Animated Series, with Kevin Conroy voicing the character respectfully. But one of the things that ordinary audiences love about Batman are his movies. Long since the 1960s have we been exposed to Batman's theatrical interpretations, from the family-friendly zaniness of Adam West and the admittedly rancid flicks by Joel Schumacher, to the dark, phantom atmosphere and the beloved performances of Michael Keaton in Tim Burton's Batman movies, and of course, the popular, heavily acclaimed Dark Knight trilogy directed by Christopher Nolan. We're not going to talk about Zack Snyder's Batman. I'm just not going to. It's been so ridiculously long since we've seen a live-action solo standalone movie featuring the Caped Crusader, and after a decade has passed since the release of The Dark Knight Rises, it feels extremely gratifying to welcome him back into theaters with the release of The Batman. Instead, what was originally pitched by Warner Brothers to be a solo Ben Affleck Batman film, the movie was taken over by another director with a script that aims to approach the investigative side of Batman more so than its predecessors as a neo-noir crime thriller. How do you execute such a feat and hype it beyond measure? Well, you cast Edward from Twilight, who actually in real life is an astonishingly good actor as Bruce Wayne, and you get the director Matt Reeves, who most of you know is the guy who directed the phenomenal, godlike Planet of the Apes sequels to the Planet of the Apes rebooted trilogy. That is how. And after being anticipated for this movie for quite a long time, and after watching Matt Reeves' latest work in The Batman, allow me to opine the following. Since 2008, it has been widely and heavily regarded by film enthusiasts, fans, and even Christopher Nolan fanboys that The Dark Knight is the best live-action Batman movie of all time. That is, until now. Now, I'm perfectly aware of recency bias and my own personal bias when it comes to Matt Reeves, seeing how he made two of my favorite and possibly one of the greatest movies that I've ever seen in my life. But after rewatching the Dark Knight trilogy and even watching what I have just witnessed before my eyes, in all objectivity, The Batman is the best live-action Batman ever made. And no, I'm not speaking in facetious hyperboles. This film is an unbelievable, righteous beast of a movie that not only gives the fans what they wanted and so much more, but it pays respect to the Batman character in a way that we haven't seen in such a long time. Without further ado, to start our investigation into this magnum opus, let's get right to it. The Batman drops us into the grimy, crime-ridden metropolis of Gotham City, where felons, thugs, and crime lords have flooded the city with malice, despair, and chaos, diminishing any chances that Gotham has left to revive itself. Enter the Bat Vigilante himself, portrayed by Robert Pattinson, who fends the city from criminals at night, while in the eye of the public in the morning is viewed as the reclusive young billionaire Bruce Wayne. One night, while investigating the mayor's murder, he comes across a letter designated to him with a riddle and indecipherable symbols conducted by a mass serial killer named the Riddler, whose clues would lead Batman to team up with Lieutenant James Gordon and cat burglar Selena Kyle to put an end to Gotham City's rampant corruption and the Riddler's nefarious goal. First things first, every depiction of the Dark Knight deserves its examination. So for starters, let's talk about the title character played by Robert Pattinson. Full disclosure, this guy is a terrific actor, as exemplified by his roles in Good Time, The Lost City of Z, and most recently, The Lighthouse and Tenet. He has a diverse array of talent of whatever role he has been given to him, and for the role of Bruce Wayne and Batman, all I have to say is, what a way to silence all of the bemoaning critics and fans on the internet that basically complain about him not working out to prepare for the role, or that he has been in those godforsaken Twilight movies, and to put them in their place. In the essence of an anti-hero who has served justice to criminals for about a couple of years, he commands the screen, not only by his solemn, fierce delivery as both personas, but just the simplest of expressions and glances at people is enough to make you connect with what he has went through in his traumatic past and why his lengthy vendetta has been going on for so long. And much like Captain America's Civil War and Spider-Man Far From Home, where we're given subtle callbacks and little pieces of dialogue that reference the death of Uncle Ben, even the Batman understands this in a meta sense as well, that the audience is aware about the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne. And rather than just replaying the scene over and over again to remind you of how traumatic his childhood was, the film provides comprehensive and easily digestible exposition from reports on the news, subtle dialogue exchanges, and even Batman's observations in his journal about what goes on in Gotham City, as well as writing down what goes on in his mindset that showcase sufficient information without treading into familiar and repetitive ground. It also should be known that this depiction is vastly different from all of the Batmans that we've seen in cinemas. Rather than being characterized as a superhero that is at the peak or near the retirement of their craft, or being projected in just a simple origin story, this version is revealed to be a deeply flawed and angry character. Even despite his 2 years of crime fighting, he is still quite inexperienced. He still has conflicting relationships with the police department despite his connections with Lieutenant James Gordon. His rage against thugs makes him unable to control himself, inflicting his own kind of retribution onto his enemies, making every single fight feel personal, just as the last. And it gets to the point where his revenge, like an addiction, takes a toll on him, making him question his morality and who the persona of Batman is supposed to represent: vengeance or something else. Story-wise, the narrative for the Batman is one that I would describe as masterfully written. The film not only serves as a character study for Bruce Wayne and his eternal struggles that he inhabits, but as a noir story about a young detective who hasn't reached his peak yet, solving a mystery that he and his past might be a part of, cobbled together impeccably with well-executed and extraordinary character arcs and relationships. And while there might be a finger or two of pure conveniences, the script writing still delivers on its remarkable twists and its thorough structure. And I know what you're thinking, well, okay, we've seen the detective side of Batman, what about the action scenes? Does he kick any ass? Are the fight scene any good? Here's the answer to those questions. Hell yes! Bar none, this exact film contains the best action sequences in the entire Caped Crusaders filmography, expressing vulnerability in Bruce Wayne not only just by how he tries to handle situations that are very difficult to get out of, but of how ruthless and realistically choreographed they are. An excellent example is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and also in the trailer, where Batman throws down with the gaggle of Halloween hooligans in a train station. From Bruce's fighting techniques to the way that the thugs are trying to share blows with fists or gunfire to the Bat, rather than just going at him one at a time, or just not using their weapons when they're supposed to, it makes an excellent first impression. But the adrenaline-fueled set pieces do not rest there. For you have moments of Batman escaping from a mass of police officers when they're trying to stop him and arrest him after a violent altercation, to him storming into the Iceberg Lounge trying to save another person's life while also blocking enemy gunfire through pretty awesome practical effects, to him chasing down Penguin in one of the finest Batmobile sequences in the entire franchise. Teaming up with the spectacle is the film's cinematography. Never since Wally Pfister's work for the Dark Knight trilogy have we seen a more euphoric and staggeringly looking Batman film. The camera work is simply mesmerizing. There is no shot in this movie that is ever self-indulgent or pretentious. The grandiose imagery is earned, providing one screensaver or one artwork shot after another, such as Batman walking towards Oswald Cobblepot with fire behind him, or him with the flare leading helpless citizens out of a flooded area. With the film's dark, rugged tone, its terrific production design of Gotham City, and even its color grading fitting remarkably, this might be the most visually stunning Batman film to date. I've also forgot to mention that this film has a phenomenal ensemble cast, and apart from the main lead that we've already discussed, the supporting characters and the main villains are truly sensational. Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle boasts somewhat of a femme fatale style that works really well for her performance as Catwoman, and she acquires fantastic material to work with, making her vulnerable, having her morality challenged despite her treacherous hardships, and even doing the same for Batman. Colin Farrell is a total blast as Oswald Cobblepot, or some of you may know him as the Penguin, with incredible makeup and costume design that makes him completely unrecognizable. Other supporting characters performed by actors like John Turturro as Carmine Falcone and Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant James Gordon are underrated and function significantly to the plot as well as to our main lead, but a massive highlight that certainly cranks the creep and intimidation factor all the way up to an unquantifiable measure is Paul Dano's performance as the Riddler. A calculated, psychotic madman that with a solid motivation and a menacing performance, even with a Saw-like voice distorter, paralyzes the audience in a sense of uneasiness, similar to that of Kevin Spacey in Seven, without coming off as a caricature of a psychopath. Finally, like his team up with Matt Reeves in the Planet of the Apes sequels, Michael Giacchino delivers an eerie, haunting, intense, and even at times emotional score that bores its way into your ear canals. Atmospheric and cinematic with inspired composition, each track is perfectly appropriate to every scene that transpires and hits the right kind of emotions to the right kind of payoff. But no other track will send you shivers or brace you for badassery than the Batman theme, where it starts slow, somber, and intimidating, and then flows with harmonious rhythm as the main theme kicks in. It's one of the best Batman theme songs since Tim Burton's Batman in 1989. And if there was ever a composer that has the capability of doing it, it's Michael Giacchino. Riddle me this. What is the Batman? Downright perfection. Perhaps one of the single greatest superhero movies that I have ever seen in almost a decade, and a Batman movie that rivals and even surpasses the quality of the heavily acclaimed Dark Knight trilogy. But Luke, isn't it unfair to compare a blockbuster trilogy from Christopher Nolan to the standalone detective thriller from Matt Reeves? Well, it may sound that way, seeing how each of these movies are of different genres from one another, but what if we start comparing them one by one in terms of overall quality? It's a better film with a consistently written character arc for Bruce Wayne and Batman than Batman Begins. It's a vastly superior 3-hour-long epic with the Caped Crusader, with better villains, supporting characters, plot, and spectacle than The Dark Knight Rises. And I have full confidence in what I'm about to say. And the Nolan fanboys aren't going to want to hear this, but as a sensationally written crime detective story, despite there being a few inspirations here and there, it is a better Batman film than The Dark Knight. A neo-noir masterwork that pays such respect and admiration to an icon beloved by generations of any age and shall remain testament as the best live-action Batman film of all time. If you have nothing to do on spring break, or have nothing to do on your spare time, or even if you're too busy at school, what the heck are you waiting for? Go see The Batman. It's an unbelievable superhero film that we will not forget for years to come. Until then, Nolan has been dethroned. It's time to say, in Reeves we trust. I am the cinematic pyromancer. I am the one that blows you away. I am Luke Nukem.